The air inside the St. Jude Cathedral was thick with the scent of 5,000 white lilies, a fragrance that should have been heavenly, but now felt like the suffocating incense of a funeral. I stood at the altar, my hand trembling slightly against the heavy silk of my bridal bouquet. The lace veil, a vintage piece that had cost more than my first car, felt like a shroud against my skin. 500 guests, the absolute pinnacle of New York's high society and the elite alumni of Crestview University, sat in a silence so profound you could hear the wax dripping from the overhead chandeliers. I looked up at Cassian Thorne. For 2 years, this face had been my North Star. His sharp jawline, his deep, soulful eyes, and the way he smiled, as if I were the only woman in the universe. But as the priest reached the moment of the vows, the smile on Cassian's face shifted. It wasn't the smile of a groom. It was the smirk of a victor standing over a fallen enemy. He didn't wait for the prompt. He reached out, took the microphone from the startled priest's hand, and turned toward the congregation. The feedback from the speakers screeched through the hall, a jarring noise that signaled the end of my life as I knew it. Before we proceed with this farce, Cassian's voice boomed, cold and resonant. I have a message for my bride. He turned to me, his eyes devoid of any warmth. Did you really think I loved you, Aurelia? Did you truly believe that a Thorne would ever share his name with a girl who humiliated him in front of the world? 5 years ago, you slapped me in the university auditorium. That slap didn't just hurt my face, it burned my pride. I promised myself that day that I would make you fall in love with me, just so I could be the one to break you when the whole world was watching. Today, the debt is paid. You're not a bride, Aurelia. You're just a long overdue punchline. He dropped the microphone. The thud echoed like a gunshot. He looked at the front row, the same classmates who had cheered when I stood up to him years ago, and winked. Then, with a casual elegance that made my stomach churn, he turned and walked down the aisle, leaving me standing alone at the altar of my own destruction. To understand why I didn't see this coming, you have to understand the man Cassian Thorne pretended to be. Our history began in the cutthroat halls of Crestview University. Cassian was the undisputed king of the campus, arrogant, wealthy, and cruel. He led a pack of golden boys who treated the rest of us like background characters in their privileged lives. I was a scholarship student, a girl who spent her nights working at a diner to pay for textbooks. I was his favorite target because I refused to bow. The breaking point happened during our junior year. In a crowded student union, Cassian had cornered me, mocking my thrift store coat and my father's calloused hands. He poured a soda over my head, laughing as the sticky liquid ruined my only good sweater. Something in me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I stepped into his space and delivered a slap so powerful it knocked his designer glasses off his face. I told him, in a voice that carried to every corner of the room, that his money couldn't buy him a soul. The room had erupted in cheers. For one day, the bully was silenced. I thought that was the end of it. I graduated, moved on, and became a specialist in heritage estate management. I built a reputation for being meticulous and unbreakable. Then, 2 years ago, Cassian Thorne re-entered my life. He didn't come back as the bully. He came back as a penitent man. He approached me at a charity gala for historical preservation, looking older, humbler, and hauntingly handsome. Aurelia, he had said, his voice thick with what sounded like genuine regret. I've spent 5 years looking for you, not because I'm angry, but because that slap was the only honest thing anyone ever gave me. It changed me. It made me realize what a monster I was. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope you'll let me try to earn it. It was the perfect performance. He spent months courting me with a gentleness that was disarming. He didn't use his wealth to impress me. He used his time. He helped me with difficult estate appraisals, he charmed my father by listening to stories about his days in the factory, and he became my shadow. Every time my old trauma would flare up, he would be there to soothe it. I'm your protector now, Aurelia, he'd whisper. I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the boy I used to be. I fell. I fell hard. I allowed myself to believe in the myth of the reformed man. When he proposed on a private terrace overlooking the Manhattan skyline, with a ring that represented a new beginning, I felt like I had won at life. I thought our love was a testament to growth and forgiveness. I didn't realize that every kiss, every I love you, and every shared secret was a calculated investment in my eventual public execution. The planning of the wedding took a year. Cassian was uncharacteristically generous, insisting that we invite every single person from our university graduating class. I want everyone who saw us at our worst to see us at our best, he told me, his arm draped around my shoulder. I thought it was romantic. I thought he wanted to show the world that we had overcome our past. In reality, he was just ensuring he had a full audience for his final act of revenge. But as the date drew closer, the golden boy began to resurface in small, jagged ways. He became possessive of the wedding details, insisting on specific seating charts that grouped our old classmates together. His phone, once left casually on the counter, was suddenly glued to his palm. He began staying late at Thorn Holdings, claiming he was restructuring the family estate to include me. Aurelia, you're overthinking things, he'd snap when I noticed him whispering into his phone at 2 a.m. I'm securing our future. Do you have any idea the pressure I'm under to merge the Thorn assets? Just focus on looking beautiful in that dress. That's your only job. The gaslighting was masterful. He made me feel like the crazy one for noticing his distance. Whenever I raised a concern, he would pivot to a grand romantic gesture, a surprise weekend in the Hamptons, or a piece of expensive jewelry to distract me. But the feeling in my gut never left. It was a cold, sinking sensation that the man I was sleeping next to wasn't the man I had fallen in love with. The most chilling red flag came a week before the wedding. I accidentally saw a text message on his laptop while he was in the shower. It was from a contact named S. It read, "The Thorn subsidiary is ready to absorb her father's loan the moment the papers are filed. We're going to strip them of everything. The look on her face when she realizes she's homeless on her wedding night will be worth the 2-year wait." My heart stopped. I felt a surge of adrenaline so strong I thought I might faint. I quickly took a screenshot and sent it to my private email. When Cassian walked out of the bathroom, steam rising from his skin, he looked at me and smiled that perfect, predatory smile. "You okay, babe?" "You look a little pale." "Just pre-wedding nerves, Cassian." I lied, my voice remarkably steady. "I was just thinking about how much my life is going to change after Saturday." "You have no idea," he chuckled, pulling me into a hug that felt like a chokehold. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place 48 hours before the ceremony. Cassian was out for his bachelor party, a night he claimed would be quiet drinks with the guys. I stayed behind, claiming I needed to rest. Instead, I stayed in my office. I had been doing my own research. As an estate manager, I knew how to follow a paper trail. I dug into the Thorn subsidiary, mentioned in the text. My blood turned to ice when I found the documents. Cassian hadn't helped my father secure a loan for his small machine shop. He had manipulated the bank into selling the debt to a shell company he controlled. The terms were predatory. A single missed payment, or a clause of moral turpitude, would allow him to seize the business and the house my father had spent 30 years paying for. But the worst was yet to come. I managed to log into his private cloud storage using a password I had guessed weeks ago. Inside was a folder labeled Project Auditorium Echo. It was a meticulous record of our 2-year relationship. There were spreadsheets of every dollar he spent on me, categorized as revenge expenses. There were videos of me laughing, sleeping, and crying, all accompanied by his voiceover notes. I clicked on a video from 3 months ago. Cassian was talking to the camera, his face twisted in a look of pure loathing. "She actually thinks she's special," he said to the lens. "She thinks I forgot how she made me look like a fool in front of the whole school. I've spent 700 days playing the gentleman. I've kissed her, I've held her hand, and every time I did, I felt like vomiting. But it's almost over. In 48 hours, I'm going to leave her at that altar. I'm going to call in her father's debt. By Sunday morning, Aurelia Vance will have no husband, no home, no career, and no dignity. She'll finally know what it feels like to be nothing." Another voice came from off camera. It was Serena, his business consultant and secret lover. "You're so cruel, Cass." "I love it. When do we leave for the real honeymoon in Fiji?" "The flight is booked for Saturday night," Cassian replied. Right after I watched her world burn, I sat in the dark, the blue light of the monitor reflecting in my eyes. I didn't cry. The pain was so intense it had bypassed tears and turned into a cold, crystalline clarity. I realized that Cassian Thorne wasn't just a bully, he was a sociopath. He had stolen 2 years of my life to settle a score from university. He was planning to leave my father, a man who had worked his fingers to the bone, penniless, just to satisfy his ego. I looked at the clock. 3 a.m. I had 36 hours until the wedding. I reached for my phone and called my mentor, Mr. Abernathy, the most ruthless real estate litigator in the city. Mr. Abernathy, I said, my voice as sharp as a razor. I need you to look at a property portfolio for me. It's the Thorne family's primary estate, the Gables. I want to know every lien, every debt, and every legal loophole in their foundation. I'm going to a wedding on Saturday, and I need to make sure I'm the one who ends up with the house. I spent the rest of the night working. I didn't close my eyes for a second. I was no longer the bride-to-be. I was the architect of a counterstrike. Cassian Thorne thought he was the only one who could wait 5 years for a slap to stop echoing. He was about to find out that when you mess with a woman who manages empires for a living, you don't just get slapped, you get erased. The heavy oak doors of St. Jude Cathedral swung shut behind Cassian Thorne with a resounding thud that seemed to vibrate through the very marrow of my bones. For a moment, the 500 guests sat in a vacuum of silence, their faces a blur of horrified fascination. I stood at the altar, the abandoned bride, the woman whose dignity had supposedly been incinerated in a 3-minute speech. I looked down at the microphone Cassian had dropped. It lay on the velvet cushion like a dead snake. My father rushed toward me, his face a mask of agony, his eyes filled with tears for the daughter he thought was destroyed. Aurelia, honey, let's get you out of here, he whispered, his voice shaking. I looked at him, and for the first time in 48 hours, I smiled. It wasn't a smile of joy. It was the calm, terrifying smile of a predator who had just watched their prey walk directly into a steel trap. Not yet, Dad, I said, my voice projecting clearly through the lapel mic I was still wearing. The show is just getting started. I didn't run out the back door in tears. I didn't collapse. I turned toward the congregation, straightened my shoulders, and walked down the aisle with the grace of a queen. I stopped at the 4th row, where Cassian's parents sat, their faces pale with a mixture of embarrassment and suppressed triumph. Mr. and Mrs. Thorne, I said, my voice echoing through the silent cathedral. I hope you enjoyed the performance. It's a shame Cassian left so early. He's going to miss the most important part of the day, the eviction. I walked out of that church not as a victim, but as a woman, on a mission. I had spent the last 36 hours in a fever dream of legal documents and debt acquisitions. While Cassian was busy rehearsing his big reveal, I was meeting with the board of the very bank that held the Thorne family's primary estate, the Gables. The Thorne family lived on the illusion of wealth. They had the name, the cars, and the social standing, but their foundation was built on a mountain of high-interest loans and leveraged assets. The Gables, their ancestral home, was the only thing keeping them afloat. And thanks to a massive oversight in their recent restructuring, the one Cassian was so busy with, the mortgage had been bundled into a distressed asset package. By 9 a.m. that morning, using my entire life savings, my father's remaining capital, and a massive investment from my mentor, Mr. Abernathy, I had purchased that debt. I didn't just own their house, I owned their history. While Cassian was driving to the airport with Serena, laughing about how he had crushed me, I was heading to the Gables. I had hired a team of professional movers and a private security detail. By the time I arrived at the Thorne estate, the catering crew for the after-wedding gala was already setting up. They expected a celebration. I gave them a shutdown. Who are you? The head butler asked, looking at my white wedding dress as I stepped out of the car. I'm the new landlord, I said, handing him the court-stamped seizure notice. You have 3 hours to clear the premises of all non-fixed assets. This property is now under the management of Vance Heritage Estates. I sat in the grand library, Cassian's favorite room, and waited. I kept my wedding dress on. It was my armor. I wanted him to see me in the very outfit he thought would be the symbol of my shame. 2 hours later, the sound of a high-performance engine roared up the driveway. Cassian's Lamborghini screeched to a halt. He walked into the house, Serena on his arm, both of them still laughing. Their laughter died the moment they saw me sitting in his father's leather chair, a glass of his finest 30-year-old scotch in my hand. Aurelia? Cassian stammered, his face twisting in confusion. What the hell are you doing here? Get out of my house before I have you arrested for trespassing. Your house, Cassian? I asked, tilting the glass toward him. That's a bold claim for a man who hasn't checked his email in 6 hours. I tossed a folder across the mahogany desk. He opened it, his eyes darting across the legal jargon. I watched the color drain from his face, replaced by a sickly gray pallor. Serena leaned over his shoulder, her eyes widening as she realized the Thorn fortune she had been chasing was suddenly a black hole of debt. You bought the mortgage? Cassian whispered, his voice cracking. How? With what money? With the money you thought I was spending on the honeymoon, I replied, standing up, and with the stock options I sold from the firm you tried to manipulate. You see, Cassian, you spent 2 years studying my heart, but you should have been studying my resume. I manage heritage estates. I know exactly how to find the rot in a house's foundation. And your family's foundation was filled with termites. You can't do this, he yelled, stepping toward the desk. This is my family's legacy. Your legacy died the moment you tried to use my father's shop as a bargaining chip, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I've already filed the countersuit for predatory lending. Your shell company is being frozen by the SEC as we speak. You didn't just lose me today, Cassian. You lost the house, you lost your father's firm, and you lost your seat at the table. You're not the golden boy anymore. You're just a tenant with an expired lease. Serena looked at Cassian, then at the house, and then at the security guard standing by the door. Without a word, she turned and walked out, her heels clicking on the marble floor, the same way she had giggled on that voice memo. Serena, Cassian called out, but she didn't even look back. A gold digger doesn't stay when the mine collapses. I walked Cassian to the front door myself. The sun was setting, casting long, bloody shadows across the manicured lawn. The moving trucks were already loaded with the Thorn family's personal belongings. Where am I supposed to go? Cassian asked, looking at me with a pathetic, hollow expression. The arrogance was gone. The golden boy had been stripped of his shine, leaving behind nothing but a small, frightened man. Go back to the university auditorium in your mind, Cassian, I said. Remember that slap? You spent 5 years trying to get even. I spent 5 hours making sure you'd never be able to hurt anyone again. I'm not going to leave you at the altar, Cassian. That's too easy. I'm going to leave you with nothing but the memory of what you could have been if you hadn't been so obsessed with a girl you couldn't break. I signaled the security guard. Escort Mr. Thorn to the gate. He's no longer allowed on the property. As he was led away, his expensive shoes crunching on the gravel, I felt a profound sense of stillness. I went back inside, changed out of the white dress, and put it in a box. I didn't burn it. I didn't tear it. I kept it as a trophy of the day. I stopped being a character in someone else's story and became the author of my own. 3 months later, I stood in the same auditorium at Crestview University where the slap had first occurred. I wasn't there as a student, but as a guest lecturer on ethical management and asset acquisition. I looked out at the sea of young, ambitious faces, and I saw myself, the girl who thought she had to fight for every inch of respect. I also saw the Cassians, the ones who thought their name and their money made them invincible. Success, I told them, my voice steady and strong, is the best revenge, but not the kind of success that you flash on social media. I'm talking about the success of character. I'm talking about the moment you realize that your value isn't determined by who loves you or who leaves you. It's determined by the foundation you built for yourself. I thought about my father, whose shop was now thriving because I had cleared his debt and invested in his growth. I thought about the Thorn Estate, which I was now converting into a non-profit center for historic preservation and vocational training. I had taken a monument to ego and turned it into a sanctuary for progress. To every woman listening to my voice, there will be men who try to turn your kindness into a weakness. There will be people who spend years trying to dim your light because they are afraid of how bright you shine. They will try to humiliate you, they will try to gaslight you, and they will try to break the very things that make you beautiful. But remember this, you are the architect. If they break your heart, use the pieces to build a fortress. If they leave you at the altar, use the flowers to plant a garden that belongs only to you. Never lower yourself to their level of noise. Work in silence. Study the property laws of your own life. Know your worth, know your enemy, and most importantly, know when to walk away and when to take over. The echo of that slap didn't ruin my life. It woke me up. It taught me that I had a hand strong enough to defend myself and a mind sharp enough to secure my future. Cassian Thorne thought he was playing a game of revenge. He didn't realize he was playing against the woman who owned the stadium. I am Aurelia Vance. I was the girl who slapped a billionaire, and I am the woman who bought his empire. My life didn't end at that altar. It began the moment I realized that the only person who can truly crown me is me. If you were in Aurelia's position, would you have the discipline to stay through that wedding ceremony just to ensure your legal revenge was perfect? Or is a public betrayal like that something you would never forgive yourself for sitting through? And tell me, do you believe in the long game of revenge? Or is it better to just cut ties and walk away immediately? Let's talk about it in the comments. Your story might be the one that inspires someone else to stand up today.